Hi, everyone. This is Emily Schechter with Great Lakes Science Center, and today I am joined by the director of NeoSTEM Ecosystems, Ebony Hood, and we are going to be interviewing the director of the new documentary, Zero Gravity, Thomas Verrette. How are you guys doing today?
Doing
Doing
great.
great. Yeah, glad to
Wonderful.
be here.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I have to say, I watched the documentary. I thought the message resonated so perfectly with what we do here at Great Lakes Science Center. And the film actually features a super unique program called Spheres, where miniature satellites are controlled via coding to complete different tasks on the International Space Station in zero gravity, hence the name of the film. But how did you learn about this program and this really exciting competition that surrounds it?
Um, my executive producer, actually, he had a connection at MIT and basically pitched this idea, which is the movie about kids coding satellites in space. And, for me, I was just like, wait, what? Like, I had to take a second to kind of understand what he actually meant. And the orientation for it, which is in the beginning of the film, with the teachers, where they basically learn about how this is all going to go down and what they're doing. I was kind of learning about the program a little bit still at that moment, and so that was really what kind of became the origin of the whole project. We went to the orientation a few weeks later, shot everything, realized that this is a thing that they're actually doing, and it's nationwide, with thousands of kids competing to code these satellites aboard the ISS. And I was just like, I have to see how this is even possible. So just my own curiosity, I'm a huge sci-fi fan, and but one of my favorite movies as a kid was Apollo 13 as well. And I always wanted to make my own space movie too, and this was just kind of this unique opportunity that I found out about, and then really quickly jumped at it, and didn't we didn't have a big master plan. We just knew that there was a competition, and we're going to go see what it is and how, and maybe something will come out of it. And it slowly unfolded into, oh, there is a real story here, which I could talk about for ages about the process of that as well. But that's really where it all began, was just a recommend from somebody, and then the competition, and the folks at MIT. They kind of invited us in when they realized that we were trying to tell a story about a small group going through this program, and the doors kind of opened, and the kids took it and ran, and that's how this movie came about, really.
That's awesome. I know the idea of coding a robot to move around in zero gravity in space on the International Space Station sounds so fantastical and just so out there. I love it. But I have to ask, did you have any experience or interest in coding or robotics prior to the movie, or was this kind of something that you developed a little bit of interest in as you started to film?
So coding, in particular, I had some experience, but just out of necessity. It's been as you grow up as an adult, you realize that you need to know how to do things in WordPress or on the internet, and that's really my main kind of experience behind it. I'm an artist and creative first, with a fascination for science, and so to me, I'm always kind of interested in any stories that involve technology and robotics and things like that, but I never really made or built those things. It was more like I built them in my mind, I guess. So to meet and see and experience this stuff with the people who are actually doing it and making this difference in the world and our lives better, was kind of an honor for me. So some of this was fulfilling my own childhood dream as well. Actually, it was I guess I just kind of this whole serendipitous kind of experience between the kids following their dreams and me following mine. I was like, this thing is just a beautiful kind of cycle that all kind of came together in this magical way, and in a way fell into my lap. But then also the film itself really became a movie when the pandemic began, because it's a passion project of mine, and it was something that I believed in because of what I experienced making it with the kids, but I didn't have a whole lot of muscle and money. So when the pandemic shut everything down, it was like, well, now I have all the time to finish this project and it was such a depressing and unfortunate reality for so long for many of us, that it gave me the hope to kind of keep keep pushing forward. I guess too. Those kids really did a number for for me when I really think about the world, I guess.
Yeah, that's kind of a wonderful message, though. It seems like everything kind of comes full circle with just life in general and your goals and aspirations. It's awesome to see everything come together in the end. While watching the movie, though, I was endlessly impressed with how much coding these kids knew. I mean, they were coding these robots that are going to move around in the International Space Station. I mean, that definitely takes more than just the coding behind me on the wall here. Like, that's some actual coding. Were you surprised at how good those kids were at coding? Some of them were just 10 years old.
Yeah, of course I was. It was maybe around the third week of the program where I realized that they had already like surpassed everything I ever knew, kind of. And I think what was like, so kind of amazing to me was that how much like they were just like sponges, they took in everything, and most of them anyway, had never really coded before the program. So to watch them go from zero to like surpassing me in 3 weeks, basically, was like just a phenomenal thing to witness. And of course, that also like played into, well, how do I explain this?
Yeah, exactly.
Which took quite a bit of time to kind of hone it down into a way that was digestible in a film, because it's actually way more complicated than what it even appears to be. And not to do the kids that disjustice, it's just like one of those things where I have to make it relatable for people to be interested, to especially kids, to be like, hey, now I think I could do that too, and that's kind of the point, and the overall message is that these kids are sort of, I hope, to be an inspiration for others that are thinking about these types of paths, or even just are curious about what their peers are up to, and take a shot.
Yeah, it definitely left me feeling very inspired and wanting to at least try my hand at coding once again. But seeing how much charisma they had and how easy they made it look, I feel like I might have a little bit more of a difficult time than they would.
Yeah, you should have seen me behind trying to like piece together how this all really was going down, like, in the edit. I definitely, they're it was amazing to see how fast they grew in front of your eyes, really. I mean, that was probably the most profound part of the experience for me, was just sort of watching them go from like, like I said, zero to like way past what I'm knowledgeable about. And even Tanner, as the educator, was his first time really teaching coding and science. Really, he was more of a camp counselor kind of, like a lot of team sports and stuff like that. So he had that background, but that became a unique, important part of the film to me, also because I really do want to share how this is a road that everybody can go down, and coding is obviously more and more apparent and important for our future. It's a kind of a universal language. It's very symbolic in the sense of the film, and so to have the educator also be new to this road, I hope also inspires other educators when it comes to like teaching their kids, because the program itself is free, and it just takes the right educator to kind of provide that to their communities. So that's another angle that I hope comes out of it all at the end.
That's fantastic.
For sure. So Thomas, I wanted to ask, you mentioned being a sci-fi fan. I too am a sci-fi fan. And I remember like always in space, when you would run across other beings, there would be like this mix of everyone. It's usually like a club scene, and you see all these different parties there. You're like, ooh, what does this person look like? What does that person look like? So early on, like in the film, the contest organizer says that they're looking for a diversification of the STEM pipeline. I'm struggling with my words today. Why do you think it's important for kids from communities and backgrounds that are underrepresented in STEM to be introduced to that pipeline? So again, this idea of like mixing our cultures into learning, like, why do you think that's important?
Well, I mean, I guess the easiest way to say that is, why shouldn't it be important? I mean, I think that the movie in itself is so indicative of why I think it's valuable. Just watching the kids, especially as they get better, and like, it's really like the end of they have to like, finish the code. They only have like that day in particular where they're all working together. Me as the filmmaker, seeing that happen and unfold in front of me was just like kind of a beautiful thing to see. Like those kids didn't care about where each other was from and what religions or whatever. Like it was all about working together to solve a problem. And I feel like that is why what I hope gets taken from the film, like more than anything, because it is indicative of how I think we can solve the world's problems, basically, and it gives them the confidence that that's possible for themselves. They're giving them the ability to tackle the big social and economic problems that are facing us or coming down, environmental as well. I mean, like that's going to take a massive amount of collaboration, respect, creativity, and opportunity, I think. And all that needs to come together and needs to start young. So for me, it doesn't matter if they go into STEM at the end of this. It matters that they believe that they can work together and respect their peers, and everybody can benefit from different perspectives. I think is really what it all comes down to. I mean, like for me in the film industry and as a writer, it's like, having just like, that's my passion in a way. And so it's to see different stories from different perspectives is how we all empathize, I think. And it's what, as a kid, got me into filmmaking in the first place. So to provide that in any field, in STEM in particular, to where we're going as a future or in the future as a species, I think is incredibly important.
I couldn't agree with you more with that. You mentioned a lot about this aspect of teamwork and, folks coming together to solve a problem. And then it goes back to teamwork and teamwork again. Like that's been mentioned a ton, throughout your comment. So I'm wondering, with that being said, our culture is also very competitive. So since this was a competition, I was like nationwide, like how did you focus in on like a middle school in California?
Some of it is, that's a good question. Some of it's proximity. I live in Los Angeles, and when it came to coding in particular, I had the idea to center the film, or at least it be around Silicon Valley for the sake of just this the environment and how necessary it was for those kids in particular to be able to have this knowledge just to stay in their area. I mean, like. But I think that so that was the main reason why I decided to go to San Jose. Also, it was just availability and budget and things that are a little bit bigger than than whether or not I wanted to go to other schools or not. It just happened to be that this was again like a passion project. It was sort of like the inception of an idea that began this all, and then it kind of became something else as it went, which I think is sometimes typical of documentaries. You can't really plan out how it's all going to go down. But I just felt like, for me, I wanted to share a story where you got to know people as individuals first, because I thought coding, could get dry for some people, especially people who don't care about science and STEM and things like that. Like they need an inspirational kind of like team building, container, I guess, in order to get you through some of that stuff. And then everything becomes interesting if they're interested, So one of the reasons why I picked Tanner as a teacher is because I met him and he gave me that feeling that if I wasn't interested in this subject, like I remember as a kid, I didn't like art history, for instance, but I had a really passionate teacher that made me interested in it. And I was like, I need that for this to work. And he gave that to me. And then I met the kids once I got to his class. So it was a little bit of, I sort of followed my gut in that sense. I was like, let's go to the source. Coding is everywhere up here. Okay, let's find a teacher that's passionate and then all that stuff with his grandfather and his own history or family history and stuff that came out over the course of making the movie. But in the beginning, it was just like we have to be able to find a personal way to tell this kind of universal, massive spacefaring story, I guess.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Ebony.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that all makes sense. And you were delivered like Tanner, he was like handed to you like on a platter, literally. His story was amazing. And the youth, they had amazing stories as well that just kind of lended to the whole storyline itself. Very, very good, just good stuff.
Thank you.
You know, it's kind of ironic. We're talking about coding and robots and things that are very cold and calculated, but the film manages to pull out that more human element and humanize all of these different characters in the movie. We talk about their family backgrounds, we watch their successes, we watch some of their failures, we watch them go through all of these transformations and the teamwork, and it left me feeling so inspired towards the end of the documentary. And I'm just curious to know if there was a moment throughout all of the filming that you did where you had a moment where you were like, wow, I feel so inspired by these kids.
Yeah, I think that there were kind of two main ones. The first, I think, was the day that they were submitting their code, where it really came down to the wire. And I just remember like putting the camera down at one point in the back of the room, and I was looking. They were just all of a sudden adults to me. Like, they weren't kids anymore. They were doing things and like talking and like using like language. I mean, and coding and I just was kind of just shocked a little bit. I was like, it doesn't matter if they ever get to space almost at this point,
Mhm.
I was just convinced that was enough. And so that was just a very profound feeling to me, like to watch all of a sudden, take a step back for a second. And then when I went and shot the test run, because that was my first exposure to the actual space side of the story, and I felt like it was a little bit like cheating for me. Like I got to see it before the kids did, but it blew my mind because I realized that they were testing the kids' codes already. So what the kids had done, even though they didn't know that this was happening, it was already in front of my eyes, and it gave me and just seeing the astronaut like talk to us like in that room and just the process of this is real science getting done by people on the ground, and it was just really memorable for me. And then of course when they do the big events and the finals and stuff, I had a little bit of a heads up of how it would go because of that experience. So I was more focused on shooting with the kids and everything. I wasn't mind blown about the astronauts and the space stuff at the time because I'd already had that little bit of experience. But that was an incredible thing to kind of see and realize that they had accomplished everything that they set out to do. Even if they didn't win, it didn't matter.
Yeah, I know. I feel like you blink and then they're just suddenly adults. It's totally spot on, especially if they're talking about such complex things like coding and using all of these different terms and interacting like small adults.
Yeah,
Sure
they're building a GPS, like they're like it's incredible to see like how far. I mean, this is a program that I would have like jumped at if I was their age when I was that younger. So like to see that it's even possible and how far we've come is, just like the space station is available to be able to use for educational purposes, just phenomenal. I mean, like think about like what that really means. There's been, I think, there's a little bit in the film where one of the astronauts says that there has been people working and living in space for as long as they've been alive, and I it's just a wonderful thing to see, and where we're going now in the near future too is like very very excited to see about the possibilities and where all these kids can take us.
Yeah, for sure. Since we're talking about space, you had access to a ton of historical archival footage from NASA to incorporate in the documentary. Since we are talking about space, was it difficult for you to decide what elements to include? I'm sure that like having such a wealth of information and all of these video clips, it was probably tough to sort through.
Yes, it was, because when the moment that you like see some of that material, you just like you want like it's like you could make a mini series and like do. I mean, it's just like how much of it has been documented is amazing. And but so for the film, what I decided on was that I couldn't tell a bit without it being directly connected to one of the kids. So for instance, like they talk about the Columbia shuttle or just like the Apollo mission. Like it had to be directly tied to what the kids or like their own stories. I didn't want to come in with this omnipresent idea. And fortunately, the program and Tanner, between the two of them, and then Jack Fisher, the astronaut on the space station, and all of the elements, like really kind of led this sort of foundational road where my focus became can I make this educational every time that we use this historical material? Can it inform a kid or an adult even about something that they didn't already know? And sometimes it was keeping it basic about let's state the theme about inspiration and, where do we get it from? And it could be from, the Apollo generation, and then Jack Fisher's passing that down, and then Tanner's granddad passes it down to him, and he passes it down to his kids. All that became wrapped up in is it important for the themes of the movie, and does it have educational value? And that's really how I focused it down, because there's too much cool stuff, basically.
How do you decide what's cool when everything's cool?
Yeah, there's one bit that I couldn't fit it into the movie just for pacing reasons. But there was a scene where Tanner talked about going to the Silicon Valley Comic-Con and seeing Buzz Aldrin and the footprint that he took. There's just that's a good example though of how I tried to direct where I was going with the story. It had to come from something very directly in the room, or one of the kids that talk about it, or somebody that was a part of the story had to have a connection to that idea in some way.
Yeah, well, you managed to use the archival footage masterfully. I mean, it blends perfectly in with the narrative for everything, and it's honestly just such a great film. And obviously, I could talk endlessly about how great I thought it was, but I'm curious to know what has the response been like so far?
Well, I think it's been pretty good. But it's, actually what's been difficult for me is that so many festivals and things have been virtual. So I tend to not have a direct relationship with the audience unless I'm actually there at the screening. And there's only been a few of those because of the pandemic, obviously. Those experiences have been phenomenal, though. It's the first major screening we had, basically the Q&A afterwards was so indicative of what I wanted the movie to be and have for the audience that it actually almost brought me to tears, because we've been playing for 6 months, but I didn't have any experience or feedback really. I just was like, well, we keep getting into festivals, so I think it's doing well. But then when I heard some about there was aspects of the Q&A and inclusion and how important it was for their kids, and just all that got rubbed into, wow, that it's actually having an effect in a way that was more than I could really have imagined. Because I kind of, when you're making a movie, you're sort of just hoping that it works and people like it and that it has value. But until you have that audience reaction, you don't fully understand the value of it. And so yeah, to answer your question, it's been wonderful, and especially to see the educational value of the film being really propped up, especially very recently. It's allowing us to figure out how we're going to distribute the film later this year and get it out to as many people and in particular schools and educators as we can. So it really is, the audience is the most important part, and it's been lovely to see the response to sum it all up. But it was a long road to figure out what they actually thought, because it's a pandemic and people aren't talking to each other.
Yeah, definitely.
Now they can, and so it's all good.
Exactly. So talking about the audience, I know that we've touched base a couple times on really big, important takeaways that you want people to watch the movie and leave feeling once they watch it. What's the main number one takeaway, if you can identify one, that you want the audience to leave with after watching your film?
Oh, that's a tough question. There's so many. I think that my main focus just as the director is to remind us all that there's a whole generation that's going to inherit this world when we leave, and that's kind of paramount to what we're doing right now as a society. Is the division that we're facing. I mean, everything is the environmental problems that are on our doorstep that we've known about for so long, that still seem to be like a struggle for people to grasp or care about. And when I watch these kids do this stuff, but the global warming section in the film was something that was unprovoked. I did the interviews with the kids like it was conversation. It was the easiest way to I kind of just treated them like adults in that process. It wasn't like let me ask a question and answer it. It was a lot more like this. And And, you know, so a lot of things that they end up talking about, like the global warming section, you know, and wanting to, you know, that was something that also hit me pretty hard, because it's their future that we're not doing anything about. And I want to make sure that we remind ourselves that that's important for us to fix.
Yeah, I think that's a great takeaway. The earth is theirs to inherit. So inspiring the next generation to be their absolute best. I mean, I don't see how that's a bad takeaway.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, there's a lot to take away, I think, but that's the part that made me like really like go through and finish it, because that was the experience that I was left with in that classroom. Everything else is you know, important and anecdotal in a way, like you know, the coding and the STEM. It's like, you know, teamwork, and like there's themes, there's values, there's about getting up when you fall down, like trying again, and you know, helping each other. Like there's all of that is indicative of the road that those kids go on. But high level, I think that just that you know, even the astronauts, like I think like having their observer effect. Steve Smith, you know, talks about there's no borders, and from space, you know, it's just a blue marble, and all of a sudden those divisions go away, like the further away you are from this like planet Earth, I guess. So it's just something to remind us all, you know, that we have a responsibility, I think, to do better.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. So one of the things I wanted to touch base on was, I first want to tell you that we played the trailer at our NeoSTEM monthly meeting. And for the audience feedback, you know, the chat started jumping and people are like, oh, you know, how cool is this? So I just want to let you know, people are resonating with this film, even if it's virtual. And that was just the trailer at the time. So yay, you know, I just want to let you know, like,
of course, always.
Right,
Yeah.
you're getting cheers. But you talked about the creative side of you. And from a STEM perspective, can you please share with us, like in filmmaking, how much of that STEM is layered into like lighting and sound, and maybe some things we don't even know about? Can you just share a little bit about that in your work as a filmmaker?
Yeah, you mean like kind of like including the art in like STEAM as opposed to just STEM?
Yep, that's it.
Well, I mean, I could talk for, you know, ages about this stuff. Because, you know, I'm like kind of a scientist wannabe, but a filmmaker instead. You know, the art side of it, though, the easiest way to describe this is like, you know, I was talking about sci-fi, and one aspect of this that's just directly tied to the film is Star Wars, actually, and the spheres themselves, the satellites that are coded by the kids in the ISS, they were inspired by the scene in New Hope in Star Wars where Luke is like messing around with his lightsaber in the training droid, and Obi-Wan is trying to, you know, teach him how to do that. And so the folks at MIT decided that they were going to make one of those, and that's how the Sphere satellite actually came to be. And it's a good example of where art can inspire science, and then science can inspire. It's like this very beautiful kind of cyclical road where we have to kind of be self-fulfilling in where we're going with those things. And so for a film, if the film inspires a kid to you know, pursue a path in STEM, let's say, who knows where that goes, but that's another example of where the art and science kind of come together. I think also there's, you know, artists that create you know, these renderings of things that we don't even understand, because it's our way of wrapping our heads around massive ideas like the multiverse or black holes or anything that we can't fully grasp, scales, and you know what I mean? There's all sorts of aspects where the art and science, I think, really collide and really just like, I don't know, like inspire and help each other grow. And you know, I'm not sure if I'm explaining that the best way, but it's, to me, like, you know, as an artist, of course, I'm going to be supportive of how the art can inspire the science. You know, sometimes that's where like the dreams come from. You know, I mean, we had space stations in films before we had a space station in real life. You know, I'm not sure if one would have happened without the other, but it's still fascinating to think about, and who knows what that idea represents and where it can go.
Yeah, you're spot on. You're making yourself clear. I do know a Cleveland youth that said they were inspired to become a scientist from Harry Potter movies, you know? So it's always that overlap for creativity and however you can get the message across. I think you've nailed it with this film.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think also, at the end of the day, for me, like you were talking about the competitive side of the story and just in general how life is. I think that that's a beautiful thing to see in a science kind of environment because it's so associated with sports only to me often. And of course, there's all sorts of programs and competitions and things out there, but this was a new experience for me to see at least. And so to be able to provide that kind of that context where it's like, there's something out there for everyone, I think. And this is one example of many that I know. I'd like to think anyway, provide that hope for the future for whoever is interested in and engaged and is launches into wherever the future takes them.
Yeah, inspiration can really come from anywhere. I think that's really the main takeaway for me, at least after watching this movie. And I'm so thankful that Ebony and I were able to interview you today. And I feel like after talking with you and watching the movie, I have a better overall view of what the movie is and how incredible it is. And I'm just so thankful that you were able to use this medium to accurately portray the incredible successes and failures and teamwork and everything that comes into this incredible competition. And thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to talk to you guys about this.
Thank you.